Well, we're going to continue on as Pastor Ron started last week, and we're going through the minor prophets. We're calling this majoring in the minor prophets. And just kind of just some things to remember, especially when it comes to minor prophets. One, minor prophets does not mean that they're less important. It simply means they wrote a lot less. That's just it. When you consider some of the people, Jonah last week, Ron was able to play the entirety, sped up a little bit, but spend the entirety in a few minutes. I want you to go to Isaiah, who's a major, try to do that in a couple minutes, in his 60-some chapters or whatever it is. So what happens is it's just they wrote a lot less. So this week, we're actually going to go through Hosea. And it's something I just wanted to, as we kind of go through this, something that I think is really important. John Walton, who's an Old Testament Bible scholar, he has this quote. It's actually quite attributed to him to a lot of things. I think it's great, especially when we're reading the Bible, period. But I think especially if we're reading in these minor prophets and the different prophets, and his quote is that this was not written to us, but it was written for us. So as we get into this, when Hosea is writing some of this stuff down, he wasn't writing to us, he was writing to certain people, dealing with the certain things that are going on. But that doesn't mean that this wasn't for us. So that's why sometimes we can read it and be like, I don't really understand maybe what's going on. Well, because obviously, if we had a conversation and we knew each other, I might just launch into the middle of a bit of a conversation. We might pick it up. Somebody else comes in there who has never been a part of that conversation might be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Simply because it wasn't really talking to that person. I was talking to this person. But again, it's written for us. So there's things we can learn, and that's what we want to discover as we go through these minor prophets, is what is in this that is for us, that we can glean from. All right, so we're going to look through Hosea. All right, Hosea is a resident of what's called the northern kingdom or the kingdom of Israel. Ron went a little this last week, but essentially what happened was there used to be united Israel. David united them. They stay united under David's son Solomon. And it stayed united for a little while under Solomon's son Rehoboam. Then Rehoboam, he really dealt very poorly and harshly with the 10 northern tribes. So remember, there's 12 tribes of Israel. 10 of them, he really treated not so great. They did not like it, so they broke away and they formed a separate kingdom. And those 10 tribes lived to the north of where the tribe of Judah, which had 2 tribes, which were Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. So Hosea is from that northern kingdom. So he's part of that 10 tribes. Now, Hosea is actually unique in the minor prophets, is because though other these minor prophets would speak to things to the northern tribes, to the northern kingdom, he was the only one that was actually a resident there. So he's speaking to his own house. He's speaking to directly his own people. The other ones, they immigrated and they spoke into that. Amos, who is another of the minor prophets, who spoke to the northern kingdom, he was actually from the southern kingdom. Pretty close to the border, but that's where he has. So when that separation happened, the 10 tribes called the kingdom of Israel, and the southern tribes were called the kingdom of Judah. That happened. A couple hundred years later, that's where we have Hosea. So they've been separated for roughly, depending on where you look, but 200 some years. In that time, the northern Israel has fallen into chaos. Now on the surface, everything's looking great. There's peace, there's prosperity, but there's anarchy brewing. There's corrupt leaders. There's widespread immorality. There's class hatred. There's poverty. And Jeroboam II is the king at that time, and the Bible point blank says he was one of the most evil. He was not good to the lower class. He oppressed a lot of his own people. So you have Hosea then speaking into all this. And if I'm going to sum this up, and you can sum this up with a lot of the prophets, is that he is basically saying to this king, to this leadership, to this religious leaders, and he focuses a lot on the religious leaders. He's basically saying, you are not being faithful to the covenant. You are not being faithful to the relational agreement that was started up between the people of Israel and God. In fact, it's actually one of the main themes John Walton talks about in all of the prophets of God, is that it was actually a unique thing, is that quite often other prophets that represented other gods, they had a lot of things they would focus on. They wanted to look good in front of the king, so they made sure that whatever sort of word that God was saying really benefited the king because they wanted high standing. What's the difference between a lot of the prophets in the Bible is that they were covenant centric. Often when they would go talk to these kings, to these religious leaders, whatever that was, it was usually about the covenant. And unfortunately, usually about how they are not holding their end of the covenant. They're not holding their end of this agreement that has been put in place. So he's bringing up where Israel has been unfaithful in this agreement. Hosea is calling back to some of the things that's been in their background where they've not been faithful to this agreement. He is saying there's a consequence that is coming because of this unfaithfulness, because you're not holding your end up of the bargain, your end up of the agreement. Now, what's really important is that we see there's 14 chapters. And you can read this in 20 minutes. However, just because it's 14 chapters and because you can read that in 20 minutes, that doesn't mean it encompasses a 20-minute period of Hosea's life. In fact, they say, Tim Mackey, the Bible Project, says it's about 25 years. So as Hosea is saying, hey, you're not keeping up your part of the agreement, this is not like Israel did this one little thing and he's like, I'm not so good with that, and I got to say something. It's just 25 years in Hosea's time where he's saying, no, I got to write again. No, I got to write again. No, I don't think you're getting this. I got to write again. And then he actually, if you get through it, you'll find out he's saying, actually, if I go back through our history, we've never really been good at this. So I've been writing for 25 years or so, but if we go back the last 200 years of the Northern Kingdom, you guys we haven't done it ever really good. And I can go back even further and say, hey, we haven't done this very good. He even brings up the kingdom of Judah and basically says, we've been more like them. They're inconsistent at best. But up here, in all of the years of existence, we've never held up our part of this agreement. And so Hosea is being strong. Hosea has a lot of strong words to say. And it's not just because of a thing that happened for a year or so. It's not even things that happened for the last 25 years. It's not even things that happened for the last 200 some years. This is things that happen pretty much all the time there's been an agreement. He is saying, hey, we haven't been so faithful. But God has been. We go to chapter 4 of Hosea. He's going to say this, verse 1, that there's been no faithfulness. There's no kindness. In fact, there's just no knowledge of God in the land. Now, here's the thing with knowledge that's going on. We're not talking about an intellectual understanding of God. The knowledge, quite often, when used with the word know in the Bible, when it's translated, is a much more relational understanding of God. And I want to say right now, this is something we can learn because I think this is an easy mistake to make. I've been reading this book, It's by Stephen Wilson. He's a musician out of England. The band he is in, currently he wasn't before, called Porcupine Tree, and about 14 years ago now, they had their last concert, and it was like a pinnacle because he got to play at the Royal Albert Hall, which is like, that's a big deal. That's an iconic venue in the world, and the band is playing there. It would be their last concert they would play in 12 years. And he remembers at the pinnacle of what should be his career, the detachment he felt from the guys in the band, from the music he was playing, from his career in general, even the fact he didn't know what was going to happen after this concert because he just felt like, bleh. I can tell you of a tragic story about his uncle, and I can tell you one of his top favorite albums of 2024. It's The Wall of Eyes, The Smile, if you're a Radiohead fan. And I think it looks like I know him. But I guarantee you, if we walked down the street, I would be excited and he wouldn't care. And not because he seemed like a perfectly nice man, but he didn't know me. I don't know him. I know a lot of things about him, and it can feel that way. And I think we can understand that idea of intellectually knowing something as opposed to relationally knowing something because of, well, social media. We can confuse a lot of things, not saying social media is bad, but we confuse a lot of things of knowing about people more than we know people. We can actually be invested in people's life without actually being in that person's life. Something bad happens, we can feel emotion for them, but we don't know them. And see, that's the beauty of Hosea's writing. In all of this, he's reminding them of who God is. He's updating their understanding of him. He wants them to say, hold on. Yes, you have been unfaithful in this end of the agreement, but, and that's important to talk about, but I need to remind you who God is. He'll start off the whole book of Hosea with a marriage. Not a great marriage, because it seems like maybe it's hopeful at the beginning. We don't know whether his wife, Hosea's wife, was named Gomer. We don't know. Was she kind of promiscuous before, or was it only after? But what happens is we're seeing this is that his wife Gomer was unfaithful. Long story short, God says, go and pursue her and go bring restoration to that marriage. He would pay off the debts. He would commit his love and be faithful to her. Like I said, it is clear in the story that Gomer is unfaithful. It's not just a little unfaithful, it's very unfaithful. It is clear that Hosea is justified in ending that relationship. But in spite of the unfaithfulness of his wife, he remains faithful and works for restoration. And then it sets up this beautiful picture, which is a symbol, even a parable, of what God's relationship is with Israel. Going back, he would, much like Gomer, in the idea of let's see how she was unfaithful, he would bring that up about Israel. This is how you were unfaithful. Part of the agreement is that they would have no other God other than Yahweh, than God. Yet, there's a lot of talk about a God named Baal. So that's against the relational agreement. They would give thanks and worship Baal with the provisions given to them by God. They would even attribute those provisions again that they came from Baal and not from God. They essentially kind of would do, in a lot of cases, what I'm going to call your cover your butt religion. You kind of saw a little of this when Ron was talking about this with Noah, when there's the middle of the storm. They're all like praying to like they're each other like, wait, is it your God that mad? Is it your God that's mad? Is it your, we don't know. You do your thing, you do your thing, you do your thing. The storm still happened. Hey, that guy's sleeping down there. Maybe it's his God. It's cover your butt religion. Or it's give me the best option religion. And that's what happened to Jeremiah, another prophet. Essentially, he had, hey, I got a word from God for you. And the king was like, okay, don't like that word. What do you got that's better? That's not bad. What do you got that's even better than what this guy's got? We're going to forget about that guy. I don't like that guy. It's give me the best option. Give me the thing that's going to give me the thing I want to hear. So they had that option. The other thing is they started making political alignments with other countries to fortify their strength. Assyria's coming. Let's go talk to Egypt. Egypt's got a pretty darn good military. Ours is okay. We start to combine that, we can become really, really strong. So at the end of the day, they went to Baal, many other gods too, but Baal is mentioned a lot. Who's the fertility god? And before you start giggling, it's less about babies, even though it's more about economy. It's provisions of the land. It's fertile ground, right? So, and they want more military strength. So really what they want is money and power. Nothing's changed. They want to join other militaries. They want to have lots of resources. But the message in the relational agreement is to trust God for that. And they're looking at, no, we got to keep all our options open and find out which one best benefits me, or which one at least makes me feel a lot better about myself, or which one just makes me look good in front of everyone else. So, in all of that, God remains faithful. They don't keep up their part of the bargain, but God keeps keeping up his part of the bargain. But here's the thing. The take-home point is not the unfaithfulness of Israel. He's just using that to set up the immensity of what is the take-home point. Now you might ask a question. So then what is the take-home point? Thank you for asking that question. It is God's faithfulness, but what kind of faithfulness is it? We're going to look at chapter 11. We're going to listen to this together, and then we're going to talk about it.
Chapter 11. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and I called my son out of Egypt. But the more I called to him, the farther he moved from me, offering sacrifices to the images of Baal and burning incense to idols. I myself taught Israel how to walk, leading him along by the hand. But he doesn't know or even care that it was I who took care of him. I led Israel along with my ropes of kindness and love. I lifted the yoke from his neck, and I myself stooped to feed him. But since my people refuse to return to me, they will return to Egypt and will be forced to serve Assyria. War will swirl through their cities. Their enemies will crash through their gates. They will destroy them, trapping them in their own evil plans. For my people are determined to desert me. They call me the Most High, but they don't truly honor me. Oh, how can I give you up, Israel? How can I let you go? How can I destroy you like Admah, or demolish you like Zeboim? My heart is torn within me, and my compassion overflows. No, I will not unleash my fierce anger. I will not completely destroy Israel, for I am God, and not a mere mortal. I am the Holy One living among you, and I will not come to destroy. For someday the people will follow me. I, the Lord, will roar like a lion. And when I roar, my people will return trembling from the west. Like a flock of birds they will come from Egypt. Trembling like doves they will return from Assyria, and I will bring them home again, says the Lord.
So as we talked about, the starting of Hosea, chapter 1, opens up with a marriage. In chapter 11, we see a change of illustration. We see that of a parent and a child. And I don't know if we can connect with that. I know not everyone has kids. I think there's a way we can kind of see what's going on here. Maybe you don't have kids, but you can have similar experiences, whether it's with a niece or a nephew. It could be a friend, it could be a sibling, it could be a pet. But you take that role of a parent, and it's about investment in that child. Verse 4 talks about things that lead us to care and guidance of that child. Now, what's really interesting with the idea of a child and a parent situation is it starts to open up a different kind of picture. Even something I think even kind of cooler than the picture of marriage. Sorry. I think I have a unique perspective. I have 2 kids. One's adopted and one's biologically mine. But the same thing for both of them. Not one of them earned my love and faithfulness based on anything they did except their existence. Let's say that again. Not one of them earned my love, care, and faithfulness other than the fact of their existence. When Hosea paints this picture, he starts to paint something a little different than just this covenantal relational agreement of how one person is honoring it and the other person is not. There's something deeper in there because he talks about how he saw them as a child in Egypt. So that is before the covenant relationship, that a relational agreement is set place. That's before they become a nation. That's before all of that. You go back to Abraham in Genesis. That's before all of that, and his faithfulness existed then. So, as he's giving many reasons that he could end this relationship, that he's got true justification, and it's not like, let me look at the fine print and say, oh, look, this is where you were. You probably missed this when you were reading this thing right here, but there's this little thing that says you wouldn't do this. No. It was pretty clear. You've had a little bit of time, and I've sent a lot of people to say things. And you haven't kept that relational side, but I have. But I'm not going to end this. There's consequences. The consequences to actions. But this is what he says in verse 8. Oh, how can I give you up, Israel? How can I let you go? My heart is torn within me, and my compassion overflows. God's moved by his compassion towards Israel. He sees them as this child. He sees something deeper than just this relational agreement. And we start to see this idea of a child who decides to go their own way. It reminds me, anyway, of a story that Jesus told, Luke 15. There would be a son, and he would ask for his father's inheritance. And we think that may not be a big deal, but essentially what he's saying is I want your stuff, but not so much you. And because of their relationship, the father owes him that stuff. He provides them. This is the amazing thing in the story, is the father, you don't hear the father like, well, let's talk about this. It's just like, okay, here's your thing. And essentially by doing that, that brings a resolution to the relationship. He gives you your stuff. Essentially what the son is saying, I like you dead better than alive, because I really want your stuff. I want all your provisions. I want all the things you built up. I want to take my side, and I'm going to go and live my life the way I want to live it. Thus ending the relational agreement. Then by a combination of wild spending and a fierce famine, the son has nothing left. And all he can get is a very low-paying, demeaning job. And in the midst of that, he realizes the servants in his father's house were treated so well. Maybe he got a job with his dad. And at least he's going to be treated well, fair pay. Then, as he makes that decision and he starts to head back to home, and he's ready to say, hey, Dad, just give me the lowest job you got, because the lowest job you got is way better than whatever I'm doing out there. And at that point, I want to tell you right now, in a relational setting, I don't think that father's obligated to do anything. He's just like, you took all the money. You took your part of it. You went and you did your thing with it. I let you, like that was it. We're done. Relationship over. Agreement fulfilled. Except, so he returned home to the father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. And his father said to the servants, didn't even acknowledge his son, quick, bring your finest robes in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and the sandals for his feet. Kill a calf. We have been fattening. We must celebrate with the feast. For the son of mine was dead and now returned to life. He was lost, but now he's found. It's really easy to understand that and know that intellectually. In fact, there's probably a lot of us here who heard that story before. Probably could have summarized it just as well as I could have. But it's another thing to know that about God relationally. In fact, we might not trip over that understanding of God intellectually, but my guess is we know someone who absolutely has tripped over that one experientially. They know it to be true, but they don't necessarily feel it. They question it. They could write a really great paper on it, but it's not the reality in which they live out. Because we want to know that relationally. To know God relationally is faithful, is to know that his faithfulness is greater than our unfaithfulness, that his love is greater than our sin, that his desire for us is greater than anything we have done. No matter what that looks like. Now, I think a fair question on that, okay, we know that, but then why would God ask Hosea to live out the subject of his writing when it comes to his wife and that unfaithfulness? Like, okay, we get the kid thing. Maybe we can get that in our heads, an intellectual concept that's made. But why did Hosea have to do that? Why did he sort of live out what then he just talked about? And I think it's just because of this. It's this idea of a relational one. the idea of an experiential knowing. Because God's faithfulness and love needs to be demonstrated. God's faithfulness and love needs to be demonstrated. We can know it by a conversation like this, but we can experience it when someone sits with us in the difficulties of life, in the failures of life, in the messes up of life. I can tell you this and you can understand it intellectually. We can make it amazing and you'd be like, yeah, I'm really behind this. But there's something else when someone is there with us more than just saying the words. So God had Hosea demonstrate it. Because God's faithfulness, love needs to be demonstrated. Jesus did this on the cross. We can demonstrate it in a million ways with each other. We can think of how can we sacrifice for each other. How can we show each other faithfulness, not to say we're faithful? How can we show the love to one another that Jesus shows us? How can we show that God's faithful love is greater than our bad decisions and our mistakes, our failures and our sins? This is the take-home message of Hosea. It's not about you holding up your end of the agreement, because his faithfulness to us predates any of that. He's hoping, as we experience and know him relationally, it becomes a transformation point in us, and we live out of that transformation point. It's not just about us carrying our end of the bargain. It's about rejoicing that he is faithful even when we're not. He's not given up on us. But sometimes he lets us go and gives us what we want. But he's sitting there waiting. When he sees us, he'll come running too. Because it's why we call him Father. He loves us because we exist. And he loves you because we exist. You exist. Let's pray. I want to thank you. Help us to see how great your love is. To see how deep your love is. How transformational your love is. Where we feel like we've just messed it up. Let us see who you really are. Let us see your faithfulness. In your mighty name, Jesus. Amen.